Hey everybody, welcome back. Today's video is answering questions that I've gotten recently in emails. So if you've sent me an email question lately, stay tuned because today's video I'm going to be answering your questions. Okay guys, welcome back. Now, before we get started on the questions, I'm just curious. I thought it was funny. I got so much correspondence. Tin Man, I think it's this, I think it's that. Now here's the thing, friends. If you go back to my live stream, fast forward through it even, towards the end, I start this saw. It ran completely different. This saw was all over the place. I don't think it was the coil, and you know how I know? I was checking my notebook. I already put a coil in this. True story. It sure sounded like a coil there sometimes, though, didn't it? Okay, let's see if this thing starts now. Well, my kill switch stopped working, but a little cold-blooded, but I think it's fixed. Let's fire her back up. She's flooded now, friends, so you gotta put her on the fast idle. And okay, well, I'll take it. That's another victory. Okay, I put the camera back down. Welcome back to the channel. First question of the day, I got a comment under one of my videos from Steven Samuelson. Steven Samuelson is interested in buying an OBS, old body style, like my truck, 7.3 Power Stroke. He wanted to know if I had any tips for him. The main thing I can tell you, Steven, is find the right truck. Don't settle. One thing, I've been looking for one of those for a bit. One thing I learned, the more I looked at them, the ones that look really clean often are cobbled together. 3 trucks built into one, or they got a tuner on them. They've been, raced around. Many owners, no maintenance. So again, try and find one like that one. Find one that an old boy owned. He towed a horse trailer with it, and he's had it since new or for 20 years. When you pull the dipstick, is the oil clean? Does it leak oil? Does the under the hood look like it's had maintenance done? Little things like that, and buy one that's untouched, like I did. No tuner, nothing done to it. That's probably your best bet. And again, these trucks are pushing 30 years old, so it always is a crapshoot buying an old truck like that. I got lucky. That truck's been phenomenal, and but that would be my advice to you is don't get emotionally invested in the first one you find, because you're going to look at it and you're going to be like, oh, this thing's so cool and I can take it home. Find the right 7.3, the one that's clean, well kept, and maybe needs a few odds and ends. Like my truck, I've put some money into it, but I bought it at a price point knowing that I was probably going to put a couple grand into it, and I have. And but now it's exactly how I want. So anyhow, Steven, that would be my best guess of how to do it. If I was going to do it again, that's how I would do it. Again, friends, I could never get to all the emails. It's the law of numbers. There's one of me and so many people that, have questions. So like I always say, if you send me an email and you don't hear back, give it a week or two and maybe send another one through. I answer them in batches, and I try and jump in there several times a week now. And that's the way it goes. Okay, first question of the day. I get a lot of this kind of stuff, and I like this stuff because if I can help, I definitely will. Gustavo Cruzado, I hope I said that right. It is a 2017 460 Rancher. It has been heavily used, lots of hours, and also been taken good care of. Last week while cutting, it felt a bit bogged down. We've all been there where your saw starts to feel funny. As if it were flooded. Today after cleaning it, it ran awful. As soon as I hit the gas, it bogs down again, and I had trouble getting the revs up. Eventually the revs reached high RPM, but it will not smoothly keep them up. It takes a long time to come back down again. I'm thinking there's an air leak. Hey, he posted a video. Well, let's go to Gustavo. Oh, YouTube video. Okay, friends, well, let's just turn this up. There. There, friends. What do you guys think of that? Okay. Well, that certainly helps. If you got a saw that don't run good and you can send me a video, we're in business. Okay, so without having the saw here, Gustavo, you say you've put a lot of miles on it. I don't know if you're a cutter or what you're doing with that saw, but at this point, your saw's got enough age on it. It's, we're in 2024, so that saw's 7 years old. First thing, maintenance. When was the last time you put a fuel filter in it, fuel line? Okay, those are the main two. Have you ever put a carb kit in it? Have you ever cleaned the carb? That carb can be loaded with junk. That's where I would start and go from there. Now, if none of those things fix it, and the thing is, to me, that saw there doesn't sound like it has an air leak. It almost sounds like it wants to seize. I'm not going to lie to you there. I've seen saws seize like that where they're having a hard time. So again, pop that muffler off. Have a look at the piston. Is the piston scored? Does it look damaged? All those little things. So maybe start with looking at the piston. And if it looks okay still, meaning it's shiny, there's no scratches up and down, dig into the fueling system and see if that helps. Now, if none of that helps, one thing you can do, it's a quick and dirty trick. Get some carb cleaner and spray your crank seals and see if you got a leak somewhere in there. And you'll probably find that you have one or multiple things going on. But anyways, I hope that helps, and happy wrenching. I'm sure you'll figure it out one way or the other. Gideon Owens. Hi, Mr. Tinman. My name is Gideon Owens. How's it going, Gideon? I'm a new porter. I was wondering if you had a video on information about the amount of degrees of vacuum you get needs to correlate with the amount of blowdown you get. Is it better to have more vacuum or more blowdown, or do they need to even each other out and work accordingly? Okay, Gideon, I did do a video 6 months ago maybe on how blowdown affects intake timing. Now, stuff like this becomes very highly contested amongst porters, and I don't get involved in that stuff. I just do what I do. Talk to a lot of other guys that do things differently than me. So my thought pattern. Now, one thing I will say for anybody watching out there, when you start porting, every saw is going to be different. Every saw is going to react differently to what you do to it. So there is no secret sauce or magic numbers, or if you do this, this, and this, you'll have a fire-breathing saw. If it was that easy, guys like me, when they get a good one, wouldn't be, saying, wow, this one's really good, because they'd all be excellent. You know what I mean? So get that out of your mind. Now, remember, this on the way up, you're creating vacuum for your bottom end, right? Your piston's pulling a vacuum on the bottom end, and then when the piston clears the intake, you create that intake pulse, and you pull fuel and air and all that good stuff in the bottom end. Now, remember, when your upper transfers are open, that can affect how long till you make vacuum, because, your transfers are fairly big. That's a huge leak. So I'm of the mindset that on most saws, I don't like short blowdown, because blowdown, right, on your way up, if your transfer ports are here, until your piston moves up and covers that transfer port, you're not creating vacuum, or like you would if that transfer is closed. Is there a relationship? Yes and no. Again, that's where you really want to keep a notebook. I have every saw I've ever ported in this book, and I have diagrams and schematics and math, and I actually keep notes. I have a little cheat sheet. The bottom of every build, I look at the correlations. I write down how many degrees is the intake under vacuum, intake duration, my blowdown, how many degrees my transfers are open, whether I pitched them up or left them the same. Drawings of the shapes of my ports, how wide they are. I keep track of all that stuff. So Gideon, all I can say is sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. What I usually tell people is, until you're really proficient in porting, don't grind the upper transfers, because I feel like you can do more harm than good. Once you kind of get the hang of certain numbers that you're looking for, and you notice certain numbers correlate to certain size of saws, then start moving your transfers around. That would be my advice to you, Gideon. Thanks for sending the email, and hope that helps you out. It's porting's a lifetime journey. That's why old crusty guys like the Iron Horse are still doing it, because it's fun, right? And the more you know, the less you know. How's it going, Harvey? I miss the Harv's videos. I watch them all the time. Okay, what do we got here? Matthew Bryant. Hey, Tin Man, new to your channel and love the content. I am a line clearance tree trimmer and am more recently getting into power saws more and how they work. My question for you is, in your latest video, in the one ring or two, you kept saying that heat is the enemy of saws. We cut all summer long and was wondering if on hot days we're running those saws hard on big wood, would it be beneficial to help remove heat to let them idle for any amount of time? Yes, 100%. Especially restarting. If you find your saws are hard to start, they're getting heat soaked, especially on a hot day, you should put your saw down, let it idle for a minute before you shut it off in the heat. That definitely will lower your head temps. And when I say heat is the enemy of saws, stock saws for sure, ported saws 100%. That's why you guys see me doing stuff like this, you know, building these crazy pipes. It's simply because the more heat I can get, I'm lowering the operating temperature of the engine, and if I lower the operating temperature, my saw will make more power for longer and it'll live longer. So, but yes, even on a stock saw, it is beneficial to get the heat out. And I know if you're doing line clearance and that, you might not be able to run a muffler mod. And if you do, you need a screen in it, but any way that you can open that muffler up and get some of that heat out is nothing but beneficial. And you'll notice your saw runs better too. Ron Williams, I have an old 044 that is weak. I pulled the muffler and the piston is badly scored up. I hate to replace it with a new saw. Don't do that. 044? The Tin Man has one. I really like that saw. Oh, I just dripped oil on my pants. Oops. Anyhow, he wants to know what I would suggest. Well, Ron, honestly, pull the top end off and have a peek in there. If the top end's scored, I mean, basically, there's if the damage is going in and you could feel it with your finger, that cylinder's probably no good. If it looks like there's aluminum smeared on it, you might be able to clean that. Sandpaper, 400 grit sandpaper and some time, and just take your time. If the cylinder looks good, put a new piston in it. It's rare that a piston's scored and you don't have some either aluminum transfer or smear onto your cylinder wall and or a damaged cylinder. So you'd have to take a peek. But honestly, you could still, as far as I know, buy a new cylinder from Steel if price is no object. Or you could go to like Wolf Creek Saw Shop like I do, and you could put a Meteor or Highway cylinder from Ryan at Wolf Creek on there. Either way, and at that point, I would do crank seals, fuel filter, fuel line, carb kit, impulse. You might have $250 into the whole deal, but honestly, that saw will run like a dream for another 25 years or however long you've had it. So anyhow, Ron, enjoy your 044. I'm sure you'll get it back up and running again. Great saw. Maddox Milligan. I like that. That's a good handle. Maddox Milligan is 20 years old from Albany, Oregon. He just started his small engine repair business, and he's been working on chainsaws mostly, but pressure washers, generators, things like that. Do I have any advice for a guy just starting out? 100% Maddox. So when I just started out working on chainsaws, now I've been pulling wrenches my whole life. I was buying saws, rebuilding them. If I didn't want to keep them, I was selling them at a small profit. I took those profits and I was buying tools. I usually would buy tools, chainsaw specific tools, and do that. Because after a couple saws, I had most of the tools I needed. I then would buy more saws and just keep doing that until, you know what I mean? I would buy 3 saws, fix 2, keep 1, get rid of those 2. That's how this all started for me. And really, I needed more firewood. I couldn't afford to buy it. So, invest in tools and knowledge, and reach out to people if you are having a problem, especially with all the YouTubers around. There's so many YouTubers that have great channels that'll help you, and just study, and after a while it'll really start to all click, and be honest. And one thing I can say, I've seen this a million times, don't take more work than you can do. Friends, the reason why I don't take saw builds is my scheduling, my day job is pretty involved, and my day job takes up a lot of my time. I have a toddler, I have a wife, I have all this stuff going on. YouTube, I could never add saw builds to that because my turnaround times would be horrendous. So that's why I've never taken builds. So that's one thing I can say. Don't take more work than you can do, and don't take on jobs that you don't want to do. We've all done it. You'll take on a project that you don't really want to do, and then you end up sitting on it. It happens. I did have a question today, an email. I read it, and I can't remember who sent it, but you out there that sent it. Fellow had an 038 AV Super steel, and he wanted to upgrade something a little more modern. So he's looking at a 620 Echo, 044 steel, or a 372 original. Which one would I pick? Well, I own both an original 044 and an original 372. Depends on what you're cutting. I wouldn't pick the 620. I like Echoes. I don't love them. I know a lot of people love Echoes, and that's okay. Ford, Dodge, Chevy. We can all hang out together. I'm not a huge Echo fan. And really, if you already have a 60cc class saw, upgrading to the 620, it'll make more power, but it probably won't have as much grunt as your steel. Moving up to 70cc class is better. I think it's a 044 to 372. They're similar but different. If you want really smooth anti-vibes, 372. If you want something that's a little more, higher chain speed, orangutan, 044. That's a tough one. I'm going to say between the 044 372 stock. That's a hard one. You catch me on the wrong day and I'll say a different saw. I like them both. You really can't do wrong with either of those. So, anyways, whoever sent that, thanks for sending that. I hope that helps. That's a tough one though. I like them both. Joseph Parker. Joseph Parker has a smashed 200 steel right here. I got one of those here. I got this off my buddy. This thing runs too. It's got no muffler on it, but I bet ya. Maybe it's not going to go. I don't know if there's any. There's no muffler on this saw front. It's pretty turdy. Okay, that was fun. These are good saws, aren't they? This thing's been sitting since I got it. Like, I haven't done anything with it. Joseph Parker. He has an MS200T like this, and he says it's pitted where the bar goes. So in this area, looks like there's a hole in the case. He wants to know what I would do. Would I put a Farmer Tech case on it, or what would I do? Well, honestly, if it's kind of a beat up 200T like most of these are, let's be honest, I would honestly take that case, clean it up real good. And I mean good. Alcohol, Q-tips, whatever you can do, scuff it up. If there's a hole in the side of the case where the bar goes and you're having troubles there, put some JB Weld in there. Mix up a little JB Weld like you buy at the hardware store and put that in the hole, let it dry, sand it flat, boom, done, run it. That'll last for years. So that's how I would fix that. If it was a really clean saw, I would maybe look for a set of cases. But I mean, if it's a beat up one like this thing runs good though. But that's what I would do. Okay, I wanted to find this one last email. I had to dig around here a little bit. This one appears to be from a fella named Eric. I will paraphrase it. It's a fairly long email. Okay, he says, his question is this. You port the transfers, the piston, but if you're not opening up the intake block, like on, say, a 262 XP, won't this lean the saw out? I mean, the opening can only let so much into the cylinder. If you port it and demand more fuel, how can the plastic intake keep up with the demand if it's left factory size? Maybe a dumb question, but I just recently ported 262. It seems to run lean upstairs, and I've opened the high jet all that I feel comfortable with. I'm thinking of just tickling the opening of the intake block. Is this a bad idea? Okay. Now, one thing I'll say, I don't know exactly what you did to your saw. There's a lot of reasons your saw could be lean. My biggest question is, how high is the exhaust roof and what RPM is it going lean at? You guys notice I never use a tack on my saws. I'll let my saws tell me where they want to be tuned. I'll tack them later if I'm curious what kind of RPM they're pulling. But if you're at 1.5 turns and your saw is still lean out of the wood, you probably have a problem, or 2 turns wherever you're at. And again, it doesn't list it in here. Now, one thing I can say is, where's your metering lever at? Is it a new carb? Is it an aftermarket carb? Is your carb been rebuilt? What's your fuel system like? All those things. When you port a saw that maybe has a small problem, you end up with big problems. Now, the intake block idea. What controls how much fuel and air gets into a saw is case capacity, intake timing, and intake shape of your actual intake port. Opening up the straw, the end of the nozzle, this part right here, isn't really going to change how much vacuum's pulled on there. When you port a saw, you're changing how much pull there is on the carburetor. So honestly, hogging out intakes, your intake boot, let's see if I can get this off now. That's an 044 intake on a 372. I was looking at something, one of those weird Frankensaw ideas. But honestly, you're going to find your intake is always 99.9% the same size as your carb. If you hog the intake out, it's not going to change anything because your carb is controlling at the inlet end of the carb. That's controlling how much vacuum's on there. But really, what's really controlling how much vacuum that's on the carb is your porting. Now, I will say, and maybe I'm going too far down the rabbit hole, sometimes a saw will want a bigger carb, but usually you got a serious saw. Like, you've done a lot of work to it to need a bigger or a nastier carb. So honestly, I would more look at your fueling system and where your intake timing is at. Did you add intake timing? How much did you add? And go from there. Is your intake overly large? A large intake often can lack vacuum. So lots to deal with here, but hopefully, Eric, that gives you some ideas. And remember, there's no dumb questions, only dumb answers. Anyhow, everybody, I'm going to go into the house. Thanks for hanging out. And again, please send me your emails. Without you guys, there is no me, and I'm always happy to answer your questions. Thanks for watching. Take her easy. Later.